Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here on WCNC Plus at 7:31. I'm Ben Thompson.
And I'm Jane Monreal. So we have a lot to digest this morning, both locally and nationwide, morning after Election Day. Joining us right now to talk a little bit more about it, Christopher Cooper, professor of political science and public affairs at Western North Carolina.
Professor, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. We know it's early. You and I chatted about these races about a week ago. I don't want to be too leading in my question, but let me ask you, what were you most surprised about as you woke up this morning?
I mean, the presidency, right? I think that's the only answer there. And just the fact, look, we thought it was a possibility that one of the two candidates would win all the battleground states. The fact that it actually happened, it is a bit of a stunner, right? The rest of this election kind of went the way we expected it. North Carolina looked a little bit purple. The Democrats actually gained a seat on the Council of State. They won the only competitive congressional district in the state. They broke the Republican supermajority. Yet Donald Trump increased his margin in North Carolina and elsewhere. It's an interesting head scratcher.
Well, North Carolina, you just alluded to it, voted for a Republican for president, but then some Democrats on down the ballot. Do you think this is increasingly what we're going to see? I mean, you and I talked about unaffiliated voters and their large role in the election now. Do you think the days of straight party ticket voting are done?
You know, I don't think they're done exactly. I mean, look, most folks did cast straight party tickets. You know, most states aren't seeing the kind of splits that we see in the state of North Carolina. So straight ticket voting is still here. It's still the sort of primary way people cast ballots. But as we saw in North Carolina, these small margins can make a difference. I'm still digging into the data today, of course, but it looks like for the vast majority of counties, they went completely with one party or completely with the other party, with the bright exception of Mark Robinson, who didn't do well in a whole lot of places.
Yeah, along those lines, Professor, Trump again, a narrow margin in some of these blue-leaning states. So how are we seeing then this political landscape change more along Ben's line there?
Yeah, I mean, it's Trump's world, it appears, at least politically speaking. I mean, he was able to really pull a magic trick. I mean, all 7 of the battleground states. And, you know, we're still waiting to see a little bit with out west, but it looks like he's at least leading there. And he won all of these so-called blue wall states. He took the entire South with the exception of Virginia. So it appears that the sort of electoral juggernaut of Donald Trump, I don't know that everyone understands it, but it's here and it's real and it's dominating our politics.
Yeah, speaking of understanding it, I mean, going forward, say 4 years from now, when there's 2 new candidates running for president, how have our parties realigned because of Donald Trump in the last 8 years? I mean, when you take a look at the demographics from overnight and Latino men, how they shifted towards Donald Trump, I mean, you have a fundamental realignment from, say, when John Kerry and George W. Bush ran 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think a whole lot of it is the first part of the description, right? Latino men. And I think you're also seeing the same thing with men, African-American men. I mean, the gender gap is growing and growing and growing. And I think there was a lot of discussion before the election about how this would benefit the Democratic Party, right? If there's this big gender gap and women tend to vote for the Democratic Party in much bigger numbers than men do, then certainly that'll help the Democrats. I think what we all didn't acknowledge enough is the gender gap cuts both ways. And if men are overwhelmingly favoring the Republican Party, and in particular Donald Trump, regardless of their race, then that's going to be a sort of a hard trend to counter.
And I know it's hard to predict exactly what second Trump presidency will look like, but sort of lay out the stakes for us right here. You have Mr. Trump as president. He's going to have the U.S. Senate in his favor as well. Might have the U.S. House this morning. We still don't know. He's already named 3 Supreme Court justices, could name several others. What is this second term of a Mr. Trump shape up to be like?
I mean, I think it's going to be even more than we saw the first time. Even more, I mean, even more of everything, right? Donald Trump is a lot of things. A shy person's not really one of them, right? And so I think we're going to see more of it. I mean, he's had conversations about getting rid of the United States Department of Education. Will he be able to follow through with that? I'm not really sure, but that's going to be a conversation we're going to have as a nation. He talked about deporting, thousands and thousands and thousands of people overnight. Will he be able to pull that off? I don't know. We need to watch. I mean, somebody like RFK Jr. has talked about fluorination being a problem, like fluoridated water. So are they going to follow through with things like that? I don't know, right? I don't know what the answer is. It all depends on who he puts in office. But I think we all need to be watching our government. You may love the changes coming. You may hate the changes coming, but the changes coming are going to matter to you.
All right, Professor Chris Cooper, may we say not only is he a great expert and can break these things down, he's also an author of a fine new book, Anatomy of a Purple State, which sort of explains a lot of this that we've talked about and the trends we're seeing
Well, good.
across the state of North Carolina.
Thanks.
All right, Professor, always good to chat with you. Take care.